Hello, welcome to my video on my update on my layout, and in this one it's talking about laying track. Now I've jumped ahead quite a bit since the last video, and for the main reason being this is the first time I've laid track, so it was very difficult here on my own to do it for the first time and film it. So I wanted to try out a few different techniques and methods, and then work out which was the best one, try it, make sure I was happy with it for a bit, and then feel comfortable enough to talk about it. So you can see that there's quite a bit of track down, and I will talk about that incline in a minute as it's not definite. Most of this area here, all around here, there's a few breaks and stuff, but I'm going to explain what I've done. So let's start at the beginning over here. So obviously the track I have put under cork on this side, and I've got most of the points in the correct positions and laid down, and the most of the station area here is all corked as well, and up around here and these two sort of sidings, and here you can see that the track is down but with no cork underneath. So what I did first was look at my track plan and look at the size of the pieces. So the best place for me to start was with the points. So I just grabbed the points and I just literally got them out of the packet and laid them down roughly where I thought they was going to be, in comparison to each other. It made it easier. The ones that are all the points that are physically connected to each other. So see, I've got 4 points, 5 points actually. They're actually all connected to each other. I could just join them together and get one sort of solid piece of track without any of the flexi track, and just get an idea of roughly where it was. So that was convenient for me. It was just like a good starting point. Just put them down, laid them down, and looked at my track plan and was like, okay, right, well, I know that this sort of ends roughly halfway down the middle of this baseboard, so I just roughly put it there, and I knew roughly where my curve was going to start as well, so it sort of gave me a starting point. I then put down a few other points, just scat them about where they were going to be, and then, as I say, had a good place to start. I then knew from this track plan that this was just a full length of flexi track without needing to be cut. So I started there, just laid that down, and then worked my way around the outside. All I didn't just create one continuous loop. I started with just sort of this half here, all the way over, up to around that half there. Got one track in with like the curve, and then just laid it down. Didn't connect them up with just normal fish plates. I knew that they would need insulating ones put in later, but just connected it up just for now, just to make it quick and easy to lay it down and see it. I then continued laying the rest of the track again just straight onto the baseboard, and I wasn't gluing it or anything down, but to hold the shape of the curves with the TrackSettas. There's that one over there. Just put let me just grab one. This might not fit because it's a mixture of 2 different radiuses. So I think I started out with a 24-inch curve. Again, it's not in properly because it's fell out of place where I'm disconnected it, but I just put it in and then put a pin there and a pin there, and then work my way around the curve, just putting it on the outside rather than pinning it all the way through, just to hold the curve in place. And then you see, like, it isn't all properly joined up. I just roughly cut pieces and put them where I knew they were going to be, so I could get my curves in first, because with the curves in the right place, I knew that the rest of this would fit, and curves were the main thing. I wanted to make sure that they were going to be a decent enough radius, so I've used 24-inch and not 36. Where's the other one? Oh, it's over there. That's one. 30-inch. So it's 24-inch and 30-inch curves, and so some of these are even starting off at 1 and then going out, or vice versa, starting off at a 30 and then going around to a 24. Now I know that 24 is the lowest that people say. Don't go any smaller than 24 for your rolling stock to go around, and for me 24 was fine. I've even got some set track pieces to just compare it. I had some set track curves, which I haven't got here, and they were second radius curves, so I thought, well, I know second radius is the minimum, and second radius curve was sort of coming out like, so that's the 24 inch, and second radius was coming out sort of like here. So even the 24 inch is a much smoother curve than the second radius, so none of my curves are anything smaller than a second radius, but probably a bit bigger, all the way up to probably close to a third radius or more. So well, I was happy with them, with the curves in. They're not realistic curves, but what can you do when you've got a 90-degree baseboard? You've got to get around it somehow, and that is what it is, and the same on the other side. The curves at the other end, I will talk about when I get there. So yeah, waffling on a bit, I knew where my track was going to be. The curves here, laid it all out, pinned it down loosely just to hold its shape so it wasn't getting knocked, and then you can probably see here I've got a permanent marker and just followed the outline of the track just to mark it if it did come up for anything, so I knew where they were. It's a mess up here, you have to excuse me. I've just dumped everything up here, and then I wanted to then play around with the pieces at this end, because that end was pretty much set in stone where the track was going to be, but the sides here and over there I had a bit more flexibility. I didn't just want straight, although it mostly is just because of where the points are. They obviously need to line up and stuff. Put just a couple of little curves in there, and then as you can see, this curve here is actually a set track second radius curve. I had some pieces lying around, and that was what I put in the track plan, so I knew that obviously with this baseboard here is a shorter depth. I knew I had to get around here a bit tighter, so I thought, well, I'll use the second radius curves here, and that's another set there, because I know they will go round. And then just followed the curve with flexi track on that one. And then, yeah, so I've laid down most of the position of where I want things to go. As you can see, there'll be another little piece to join up there. And what I wanted to do, as I was talking about in one of my previous videos, was to create some variation. Let me just put this light on here. I'll find the switch series. I wanted to create some variation in height, just even if it was something little. So I found the 3% Woodland Scenic Starter Kit. I just think it's the 3% one. Yeah, 3%. And thought, well, I don't need to go up to full height. So I used half of it to get me up to basically 2 inches. And then I'll have 2, so that's where it will sort of finish roughly. Then I'll have 2 inch all the way along here with a bit of a curve. Then I'm going to get another decline, 3% grading round, and then I'll sort of finish it roughly there on the outside track. So again, not prototypical. This isn't going to be like a full 4.5 inch height. It's just going to be probably a variation in height, about 2 inches high. Probably just some sort of like hill or mound, something with a track will run along the top there for one of the main lines, and then this is the second main line, and that's the sort of branch freight line. So one main line will be up to 2 inches, and then one will be down low, and I've purposely created a bit of a bigger gap there so that I can then, I mean, it's only 2 inches, it'll only be sort of about there. It just gives me a bit of a smooth, gentle hill, or I can go for a very steep, short retaining wall there and just give me a bit more scenery here, just to give a bit more option. So comparing it to my track plan where these were just straight runs, you know, when it comes into practice and actually putting it down, I'm just being a bit more, no pun intended, flexible with it, and trying to be a bit more creative with the space I've got. So yeah, and then I sort of pinned everything down roughly. I didn't finish all of it, just so I knew roughly where things were going to be and space it all out. and definitely they're marked out the points. Then what I've done with the points, for example, you can't see it on this one because I've just pinned it down. I've marked it, and then through the tie bar, I put like with a pin vise, held that in the middle, and then drilled like a little pilot hole. So when I take the piece off, there'll be a pilot hole there, so I know where to drill the hole for the point motors. And then at this end, obviously, just mark it where the wire for the frog will be, and then another little hole will drill through there. So when the piece then comes up, I've got it all marked, and I can just drill it and lay it back down, and know it'll fit perfectly. As I say, I should have probably started filming a bit earlier, but I wanted to get comfortable with it and be able to explain it. So then that was the whole thing without the cork down. None of the cork was down at that point. I just had pretty much a 90% complete layout, knowing roughly where things were going to be and where the track was going to go. And then I was ready to put the cork down, and I was like, I've now got to put it all up and have it marked and lay the cork down. I was like, I'm not going to get the exact position because the cork is obviously wider than the markings of the track. So I wasn't happy about ripping it all up, and again I wasn't happy about just leaving it pinned down to baseboard, which is nothing wrong with that. People do and do quite effectively, just leave the track pinned down directly to the baseboard with no cork underneath. I made the choice that I wanted to use 3mm thick cork, as that will give the sort of prototypical shoulder for when the ballast goes down, and also it will sort of just make it a bit more easier to take up any track in the future. If I do decide I want to change, which I probably inevitably will at some point, with the glue and the ballast, it's much easier to take it up because the cork is just pinned down, it's not glued or anything down. I'll be able to just get a knife under the ballast, break it, and then the track will just come up and be a lot quicker and less destructive to pull the track up, as opposed to gluing the ballast down directly to the wood and risk splintering it or damaging the wood underneath. So there's nothing wrong with doing it that way, but that was just why I chose to do with the cork. So then the question was, right, how do you get the cork underneath the track when it's already pinned down? As you can see, I've just cut straight strips. I haven't cut curved pieces. If you look, there's no buckling or bending. I started there thinking I'm going to have to cut notches out, and you can see I didn't even need to. The cork is very flexible and will bend and mould to the shape and curve that you want with very little problem. So you don't need to cut notches out of it, because if you do, you're just going to be left with those, which I'll fill in. Yeah, I left myself a little note. I've already changed that. I needed to put in one of these by mistake when I'd already put the cork down. So yeah, I had it all pinned down with the metal insulating plates. In hindsight, I should have put the insulating ones in where they needed to be at the time, but one, I didn't have them. I still needed to go out and buy them at the time, and two, I wasn't planning on doing it this way until I sort of found a way to work it. So I literally started by taking I think it was that piece there, just where the join is, pulled the fish plates off to expose the track. So that was then loose, and I just pulled out a few pins as to where it was, but left it sort of pinned and joined there, and then slid the cork underneath, pulled the track back into its position, put the fish plates back on, and then pinned it, and then just curved the cork underneath the flex track, pinning it as I go along to the curve. And then when I got round to the next bit, I'd then pull the pins out there, bring the cork in underneath and just pin it down as I go. And it literally worked very, very well. And then I'd get to a point where I'd then slice down there. But then it gets to the point, take the point out, swap the fish plates around, and then cut and measure a piece of cork to go underneath the point. And yeah, obviously by this point, I think bringing it up gave me a chance to drill the holes there and there for the actual point switching and the frog. and then put the fish plates in, and then just carry on working my way up. And it's taken a bit of time, I'm not going to lie, it isn't the easiest way, and there's probably a much better way of doing it, but for me, now I've started doing it, I've actually got into a swing of it. It is working for me. It's very easy now. I've got the track down, just to pull the pins out bit by bit, slide the cork underneath, pin it down, and go all the way around. And I find that I'm being much more, I'm getting the exact shape that I want, and I'm not losing the definition of the curves, and I'm getting points exactly where I want them and things like that. So for me, that's worked. Whether it works for you guys, if you ever do it that way, or if there's different ways of doing it, I don't know, but I found that works. So I've just looked at the time on this video, and I'm waffling on quite a bit. I'll try and cut it down in the editing and delete any nonsense, but if you've got any questions, message me, drop a comment, and I'll do my best to try and explain it a bit more, and I'll keep you updated as I go along. But for now, the incline is still a work in progress. It might not even happen. I'm gonna that'll be the last thing I do, having laid the rest of the track, because even if I don't do the incline, I will keep the shape of where it would be, so I've got that distance between the two tracks. Just they'll be close together at one end, and then farther apart the other end, with some scenery between, and I think it's just going to give some interest and difference, to rather than being sort of like the same on both sides, and it'll just give a bit more options for when running, and something good to look at. Yeah, so as I said, I'm actually going to stop waffling now and go from there. I'll update you when I've done more, maybe in the next video. Cheers, bye.